The morning had been sunny and windless. Snow that fell overnight had melted slightly in the weak December sun, turning to gray slush in places. The cold retreated slowly, reluctantly. Children pressed their noses against frosted windows, watching the world transform. By afternoon, the temperature dropped again, and the slush froze into treacherous patches of ice that glittered under the streetlights. Tommy sat at the kitchen table, swirling his spoon through lukewarm oatmeal. His mother moved around the small kitchen, wrapping presents in shiny paper covered with reindeer and bells. Christmas was tomorrow. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine from the small tree in the corner of the living room, decorated with mismatched ornaments collected over years. "Can I go out with the Parker twins?" Tommy asked, pushing his bowl away. His mother looked up, tucking a strand of graying hair behind her ear. "It's Christmas Eve, honey. Won't you stay home? We're having dinner early tonight. I'll be back by 5. Promise." Tommy gave her his best pleading look, the one that usually worked. She sighed, glancing at the clock. It was barely 2. "All right, but wear your warm jacket, the plaid one, and that hat Grandma knit for you." Tommy grinned and kissed her cheek before running to bundle up. The plaid jacket was thick but comfortable, and the gray-blue knit hat, though it always slipped sideways no matter how he adjusted it, was warm enough. He could hear his father in the next room, assembling something that rattled and clicked. A surprise for tomorrow, no doubt. Outside, the Parker twins were already waiting by the corner, bundled in matching navy blue jackets with bright yellow stripes. Their mother always dressed them alike, even though they were 11 now, and complained about it constantly. Tommy was 9, but they let him tag along anyway. They'd known each other since kindergarten. "Took you long enough," said Jake, the older twin by 3 minutes. "Yeah, we've been freezing out here," added Matt, though they'd only been waiting 5 minutes. "Where do you want to go?" Tommy asked. They wandered through the neighborhood, their breath forming small clouds in the cold air. They threw snowballs at telephone poles, slid on icy patches, and peered into shop windows, where mechanical Santas waved, and toy trains circled endlessly. The afternoon passed in that timeless way childhood hours do when there's no particular place to be. By evening, snow began falling again, soft, thick flakes that seemed to glow as they drifted through the streetlight halos. The boys had walked farther than they'd meant to. Their boots were soaked through, heavy with cold water that sloshed with each step. Tommy's toes had gone numb an hour ago. The streets grew quieter. Bright, colorful shop windows blinked with lights, but the sidewalks were nearly empty now. The few people out walked quickly, heads down, hurrying home to make it in time for Christmas dinner. Even the cars moved slowly, as if trying not to disturb the quiet mystery of this Christmas night. Headlights, green and amber through the falling snow, turned carefully at corners. "We should get back," Matt said, his voice tired. "Yeah," Jake agreed. "Mom's gonna be mad we're late." They trudged along the sidewalk, too exhausted to talk. Their turn appeared almost without warning, the familiar intersection just 3 blocks from home. But first they had to cross the street, illuminated by bright street lamps that made the fresh snow sparkle. "Guys, wait!" Tommy called out suddenly. "Come on, what now?" the twins grumbled in unison, stopping reluctantly. "Look over there!" Tommy pointed across the street. The boys turned their heads. By one of the street lamps, barely visible against the white snow, sat a small puppy. Its coat was pure white, and it was shivering, curled into a tight ball. "Oh, how cute!" Tommy exclaimed. His exhaustion vanished instantly. He started toward the crosswalk, but the twins grabbed his arms. "Be careful! Look before you cross!" "It's fine! There aren't any cars!" Tommy answered, shaking his head and pulling free. The street looked empty, silent. The puppy lifted its small head and looked directly at him. Something in those dark eyes called to him. Tommy stepped off the curb decisively and headed toward the puppy, his heart beating fast. He was halfway across when he heard it. The sudden roar of an engine. A sleek sedan came speeding around the corner, its polished surface reflecting the streetlights. Loud music pounded from inside, and through the windows Tommy could see young people laughing, celebrating too early and too carelessly. The driver wasn't paying attention. Tommy froze for a fraction of a second, long enough to realize his mistake. Then panic flooded through him, and he broke into a run. but his water-heavy boots wouldn't let him move fast. They felt like concrete blocks. He stumbled, his arms windmilling, but managed to stay upright. Behind him, the twins were shouting. The driver saw him at the last moment. Brakes squealed. The car slewed sideways on the slick street. But physics and ice and reaction time weren't on anyone's side. The bumper clipped Tommy's hip and he went down hard, his head cracking against the frozen pavement. The world went sideways. Sparkles of light that had nothing to do with Christmas. The smell of exhaust and burnt rubber. Voices shouting. The twins' faces above him, pale with fear. A young man's voice, angry with himself. "What the hell was I thinking?" A girl's voice, sharp with fear. "What happened?" "I hit a kid! God, I hit a kid!" "Is he dead?" Her voice cracked. No, he's breathing. Call 911. Call them now." Tommy heard it all from very far away. The world was soft and distant. The pain hadn't arrived yet, waiting somewhere just out of reach. He tried to move but couldn't. Snowflakes landed on his face, cold and gentle. Above him, the streetlight made a halo in the falling snow. Then something warm pressed against his hand. Something alive. A small tongue, rough as sandpaper, licked his fingers. He managed to turn his head slightly. The white puppy had crossed the street and was huddled against him, whimpering softly as if trying to wake him or comfort him or both. "Stay with us, kid," the young man was saying. "Ambulance is coming. You're gonna be fine." But Tommy barely heard him. He was looking at the puppy, at its dark eyes full of concern. The pain was starting to arrive now, radiating up his arm, but he didn't care. His fingers moved weakly, touching the soft fur. "He came to me," Tommy whispered. The hospital room was too bright and smelled like antiseptic. Tommy's head ached with a dull, persistent throb, and his left arm was wrapped in a cast from wrist to elbow. "Fracture," the doctor had said. "Clean break." Lucky it wasn't worse. Lucky he'd been wearing that thick jacket and hat. Lucky, lucky, lucky. His mother had cried. His father had held her, his face gray with fear turned to relief. They'd called the Parkers, who brought the twins to visit. Jake and Matt stood awkwardly by the bed, not knowing what to say. "You scared us," Jake finally managed. "Yeah," Matt agreed. "Don't do that again." Tommy had smiled weakly. "I won't." The driver had come too, a young man in his 20s who couldn't stop apologizing, his hands shaking. Tommy's parents had been kind but firm. There would be consequences, they said. But they were grateful he'd stopped, grateful he'd called for help. It could have been so much worse. Now it was late. Christmas Eve was fading into Christmas morning. His parents had gone down to the cafeteria, leaving him alone in the quiet room. The painkillers made everything soft and dreamlike. He was drifting somewhere between sleep and waking when he heard a sound. A small sound, a whimper. Tommy opened his eyes. For a moment, he thought he was still on the street, lying in the snow. But then, he felt the scratchy hospital blanket and saw the dim room around him. And there, at the foot of his bed, was the white puppy. "How did you?" Tommy whispered. The puppy wagged its tail, barely more than a tuft of white fluff, and crawled up the bed toward him, breathing quickly. Its rough tongue found his hand and began licking gently, as if checking to make sure he was real. Tommy's good arm reached out and carefully lifted the puppy, holding him against his chest. The puppy was warm and trembling, its small heart beating rapidly against Tommy's ribs. In that moment, the pain in his arm faded. The fear of what his parents would say when they found the dog didn't matter. The accident, the hospital, the cast, none of it mattered. He had found something precious, or it had found him. The puppy nuzzled against his neck with its small muzzle, its pink belly soft and warm. Tommy ran his fingers through the snow-white coat, and suddenly he remembered the moment on the street. The way the puppy had looked at him across the distance, calling him. The way it had crossed to him after he fell, refusing to leave him alone. "You saved me, didn't you?" Tommy whispered. "You got me to stop. If I'd kept walking, if I hadn't seen you, that car would have hit me going full speed." The puppy licked his chin, tail wagging. Tommy smiled, really smiled, for the first time since the accident. Snow was still falling outside the window, visible through the blinds. Fat, lazy flakes drifting down on Christmas morning. The world was clean and white and new. He didn't fully understand it, couldn't quite put words to it, but somewhere deep down, Tommy knew the truth. This wasn't just a lost puppy. This was something more. A snow-white angel that had appeared on the very night Christ was born, taking the form of the most loyal creature on earth, sent to save a boy who'd been too eager and not careful enough. A gift, a Christmas miracle in a small, furry package that fit perfectly against his heart. When his mother returned and found them together, her initial shock melting into tears and then laughter, she didn't have the heart to separate them. How could she? Her son was alive, he was safe, and he was holding on to this little life like it was the most precious thing in the world. Which for Tommy it was. They named him Angel. What else could they call him? And every Christmas after that, Tommy would remember the night he learned that miracles don't always arrive with trumpets and bright lights. Sometimes they come quietly, on 4 small paws, through falling snow, with nothing but love and loyalty and perfect timing.